And we're
Aloha,
there.
everybody. There we are. Aloha.
Aloha, everybody. Welcome. Hump Day Wednesday. Let me just get my thing set up here. There we go. Aloha, everybody. Turn off my volume, number one. And we are ready to go. All right. Aloha, everybody. Aloha, Charlie. Aloha, Senate President Kochi. Yeah, we're going to do this a few times tonight.
Yep.
We got them so high tech now, Senator. We got these high tech message boards.
Yeah, Charlie doesn't have that manila folder.
Yeah. Hey, we come a long way. We come a long way.
Yeah, we've come a long, long way.
Yeah. Charlie, he gets pretty artistic with his board. He gets pretty artistic. So
Is it artistic or autistic? Which one?
artistic,
Oh,
artistic.
artistic. But either way,
Well, yeah. Hello, everybody, and I gotta tell you, man, it's exciting. We got Senate President Ron Kouchi with us tonight. We're gonna just shoot the bull for about 6 minutes or so, until 7, because that's when we told you he was gonna be on. But
hmm
we
Well,
figured
I,
why
I
not?
think the first thing I would share in the shooting the bull portion of the show is bring some culture and arts, to the program. So the piece that you see behind me is done by David Kuraoka. For the offices at the Capitol, we do get pieces from the Foundation on Culture and Arts. David grew up in Hanamaulu, raised initially by his grandparents, and moved all the way from Hanamaulu to Isenberg, where he was a neighbor of my in-laws and my wife, Joy. He's quite well renowned now, and we had him featured at the First Hawaiian Bank third floor in downtown Honolulu about 3 years ago in February or March, and then we did art in the Capitol. We normally do it in early April, and so he came by with his wife and some friends and said, "I hear you're featuring art. We have our offices open on a Friday evening for those who want to participate." And so this is a Kauai boy who has certainly done really well. And my mother-in-law would share with me that all she could afford is a very small piece because his stuff was now so expensive. But she did have a small piece from David, who was a neighbor of hers. And so there's on the Capitol website or the Senate website, we've featured various legislators who wanted to talk about the pieces of art that's in their office. And this is entitled Hanale. See, I want to say shadow, but it's Hanale Night Shadows. And so, yeah, David Kuraoka is locally born and raised artist from Kauai, and his piece is featured here. You can see it, and I normally wouldn't feature a painting that had Kapa Liquor and Wine Company featured prominently in the center, but it's the storefront in Kapa'a Town, and the artist is Phyllis Kunimura, Mayor Tony Kunimura's wife, and of course, great educator, retired from the DOE, and she ran her preschool in Kapa'a. And then I have a picture of the salt pond in Hanapepe that is, those three pieces are all in my big conference room where I generally have most of my meetings, so I can talk about, the Kauai pieces that we feature. Behind me is my hutch, and there are pieces that I get from the various council generals. They rotate every 3 years, kind of like a commander at PMRF. And when they come, they bring a gift. Now you see it's in the hutch here in my office, so every piece is registered as property of the state of Hawaii. I realize they're not giving Ron Kouchi the gift; they're giving the office of the Hawaii State Senate President a gift. And so when it's my time to leave and come back to Kauai full time, then all of these pieces will remain with the Hawaii State Senate as gifts from the foreign diplomats as they've rotated in and out of Hawaii. So that's a quick background on what you can see behind me this evening in my office.
Yeah, right on.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I hope you guys got all of that. Again, guys, before we get started, share, share, share. And don't forget support local, but share, press the share button, guys.
And much better light than in my condo. And, certainly the messy couch or coffee table is not in the background for Joy to I spy me and for me to receive a lecture immediately after I sign
Yeah,
off
she
the Mel
she
and
can
Charlie.
rest easy. She can
Yeah.
rest easy
And
right
tell
now.
Patsy, relax, relax, don't look at him.
Yeah, she's outside watching him on the iPad, so she must be. I'm sure she'll let me know as soon as we're done. So how's it going, Senate President? Interesting times for the state, interesting times for the legislature. I don't even know where to begin, so I'm just gonna let you take over, my friend.
Well, and actually, I'd like to start with sad news and then share something, really happy that has nothing to do with the wrap up of the legislative session. Of course, we were all shocked and saddened as the news of Colt Brennan's passing, spread through social media and was confirmed in the mainstream media. He certainly brought so much thrills and excitement to the fans in the state of Hawaii, and brought us to a BCS bowl game, and unfortunately, a life cut short too soon. But we have all been extending our condolences to his family, and just really wanted the family to know that in spite of some of the struggles that he was dealing with, we still really loved him and what he did for the state. And what's interesting in looking at social media, so many people posted pictures of Colt with their children when they met him, and things that he autographed and photographs that he posed for. And, he really was incredible with the young people here in this state and made so much time, so much of his time available. So, sad to hear, and, our prayers are with his family. The second thing, on the happy note, I had a chance with Senator Brian Taniguchi, who represents Manoa, and he did the certificate, to go to Washington Place to congratulate the University of Hawaii men's volleyball championship team. And Mel, when you were council chairman back in 2017, they came in November, they did clinics on Kauai, and they had a green and white game. And then we posed for a picture. And usually I'm in the back row, and Mel and I were prominent in the front row, and we were just dwarfed by all these 6'7", 6'9", 6'10", individuals. And they were great. And 2 years ago, they came again, did the same thing. And, Coach Wade had talked to me about in 2019 playing a regular season game. And I just told him the facilities at Kauai High School were not ready to accommodate a regular season game to bring a team in and play in those conditions. But earlier this year, we broke ground on the new Kauai High School gym. So hopefully in maybe 2 years, we'll be able to host them in a regular season game. But one of the things I talked about when I had a chance to congratulate the team, and I spoke after the governor, Coach Wade, Colton Cowell, the captain. Coach Wade said, we've been building championship men, and we've been very close to being a championship team. And this past Saturday, we finally became a championship team. So I don't know what it'll all mean. And I tried to help explain what championship men are. So they have an itinerary of where they're going, and they advertise where the team will be. And certainly they want the fans who want to come out back then, pre-COVID, to come out and engage and interact with them. But when they were here in November of 2019, I was in a Wilcox Hospital with my dad, who was hospitalized at the time. And Coach Wade grabbed several of the players and a couple of assistant coaches and jumped in the van, and they drove to Wilcox Hospital. And on Saturday morning during the recreation time for the long-term care facility, they went and visited with the long-term care residents and spent time autographing things, taking pictures, and going around and just greeting everybody. And really the measure is, what do you do when the camera isn't on? How do you handle yourself? What do you find important? And that's what Coach Wade found to be important. That's what some of these young men found to be important. And I said, when he's trying to build a championship man that you're going to be for the rest of your life, these are the kind of lessons that he imparts on these young men. And I'm so thrilled to see them achieve the championship team portion of it. And for Colton Cowell, he's from Maui. He was a walk-on. Nobody offered him a scholarship. And he's going to now leave the University of Hawaii as an All-American and a national champion. And what a role model for the young people out there. If you believe in yourself, if you never give up, you work hard, you can achieve anything you want to achieve. And then the great thing about going to the Rainbows is he went to a place where he was accepted, he was supported, and people worked with him to make him and help him become the best individual he can become and the best team player he could be, and not put him down, not cast him off to the side. And it's just such an incredible and inspirational story. And I was telling them what really got me, because I was watching Thursday's game on the iPad. On Thursday's game, Rado probably had the worst game of his career. And the announcers kept saying that Patrick Gassman is playing so good, he might be the first middle to win the MVP. They couldn't even remember the last time a middle blocker would be the championship tournament MVP. And the rest of the team carried Rado. And, he just kept plugging away. It wasn't his day. And then on Saturday, his serve was unstoppable. His hitting was unstoppable. And he said, guys, thanks for carrying me on Thursday. Now look what I'm going to do for you today. And the announcers kept marveling at Colton Cowell, who was struggling as a hitter. But they said, even though he's not having his best hitting day, look at how he's digging. Look at how he's blocking. Look at how he's serving. Look at all the other things he's done to contribute to the success of the team. And, to see how all those parts come together. And when one is struggling, the other one is picking them up. When some of them are facing personal adversity, they don't let their own ego take themselves down. They find other ways to contribute. And what an amazing team, and great job by Coach Wade. And we're certainly excited and hopeful that we'll be getting them to come back. So that was a great way to start today after getting the sad news on Colt Brennan.
Yeah, you bring up some really good points, and I'll just make a real quick comment about Colt. Colt Brennan was an amazing quarterback. The guy was he was a gunslinger, man. It was just amazing, and of course the offense, the whole team. It was a great team, and he accomplished a lot of things. And I think he's probably the best quarterback we've seen at UH. That's in my opinion. And throughout his career, he's had challenges, and unfortunately, all what we saw as the public with the media accounts of the negatives. And it's funny what you said about the UH volleyball team at the entertaining or visiting the senior residents, the kupuna at the hospital. It's what they do when they're not on camera. And what's ironic, now we are getting to see Colt Brennan from everyone else's camera. You mentioned it earlier, Senator, about all of the pictures that he took with kids, with adults, all of the autographs. Nate Ilawa was saying, this guy was so generous with his time that he would take the time and sign the autographs for all the kids. No one left. He stopped signing when there was no one left, and that was Colt Brennan. And that part we didn't get to see, unfortunately, until now. So very, very good points, Ron. Thanks for bringing that up. The guy's he's an amazing guy, um, and yeah, what a big loss for us. And as far as volleyball, I think a lot of you may know, but some of you may not know that the Senate president was himself an All-American volleyball player in the
Not
NCAA.
an All-American, but I
I
did.
thought you were an All-American. I was trying to pull up some video. I couldn't find any,
Thank goodness.
but no, seriously, Senator Kouchi is a volleyball player in college. He was an amazing volleyball player. And I don't think a lot of people know that. So that
Well,
answers
the other
that's
thing,
why I don't know that much about volleyball.
the other thing though, when I talked about Colton Cowell and looked at him, it reminded me of Miley Golden. I had the opportunity to coach the Waimea High School girls as a head coach or assistant coach for, I think 1985 through 87, when Miley was a sophomore through her senior year. And she received several Division I offers to go to places like Oregon State, Washington, Oregon, and they weren't, as powerful schools as they are today. They were building programs back then, and they thought Miley is one of the kind of players that could build their program around. And she just had her heart set on going to the University of Hawaii, and she walked on without a scholarship and eventually earned the scholarship. And her senior year, she was a starter and got to the national championship game. Unfortunately, her story didn't end as happily as Colton's with the national championship. But again, just incredible belief in herself and the dedication and commitment to work hard to realize her dreams. And then her daughter comes in, she's a star player for the University of Wahine Rainbow basketball team. And, it's been a real privilege to have an opportunity to coach a Division I athlete. We had three young ladies, one at Chaminade, one at Hawaii Pacific University, one at UH Hilo. So we saw four of our girls, go on and play volleyball beyond high school at the collegiate level. But enough of volleyball and my real passion. And to the session that recently concluded, it certainly was challenging and different. And it's such a relationship-driven business, and to not interact with people in person was just very different. And one of the things that struck me is I talked to a leadership class every year, juniors and seniors, and they sit around the big conference table and they are all well prepared. They have excellent questions, and it's such an interesting exchange of ideas, and the energy is incredible. And then you do it on Zoom and it's so sanitized. It's challenging. I think I made a speech to the Filipino Chamber quarterly dinner meeting, and you're not quite sure if people are laughing at the joke or are you talking about something that's interesting to them. You can read the body language, you get the energy from the room, which helps you, I think, be a better presenter. And communicating with this, while it has benefits, there's certainly been challenges. So the fact that we were able to allow the remote testimony for the session has now ensured going forward, and I would at least speak for the Senate, that remote testimony for those who are interested in testifying is here to stay. And so we'd always said for the neighbor island residents, the cost of getting to Oahu, who would know that the rental car would be more expensive than the airline ticket as it is right now, but that's going to be possible. But when you think about the distance from the leeward coast to coming over the Pali and the windward side, there's distance. everywhere. And then in the new COVID environment with those with underlying medical conditions or some of the kupuna who were active at the Capitol, this will ensure that they can continue to testify. And if they feel for their health and safety that they should do it via remote testimony, then that will be an available option. And so, before we even get into technical aspects of what passed or didn't pass, the fact that we were now able to do the virtual participation has really advanced us so quickly. And we've talked about it even when I was on the county council trying to but you'd have to go to the basement of the state building where they had the special camera and, to try to do this whole teleconferencing thing. It seems so complicated, and, we've made the upgrades, and, our IT people have done an incredible job. The clerk of the Senate in working with the IT people, and, that was fantastic. The second thing that was amazing is that no one came into the Capitol with a positive test. During the whole session, we never had to, take a recess or have people go into isolation. And the fact that everybody was exercising best practices, I think, was also, a significant thing. Of course, the big news at the very end was Senator English retiring, but, in his statement, he had contracted COVID on the mainland back in November. It had nothing to do with him being at the state capitol. His isolation or quarantine was on the mainland, and unfortunately, with that long hauler effects to his cognitive skills and just stamina, he did announce his retirement after 21 years in the Senate. But that's all of the non-bills things. Are there, is there anything in particular you guys wanted to talk about, or as we've been kind of immersed in everything here, I haven't had a chance to watch the show that much. So, if there's something, you can steer me that way. Otherwise, I can talk for the other 45 minutes, no problem.
I think, Senator, and thanks for that overview. I know one of the things I did want to talk about, and you already covered that, was Senator English stepping down, which was quite shocking. He's a good friend of all of ours, and so yeah, it's but it's kind of admirable, I guess, to be able to recognize the importance of family and health, and step down, and not be a burden on anyone. And so we only love that man tremendously. A couple of things, I think, Senator.
Well, if I could, just on Senator English, though, he had discussed with me of paring back some of his duties because he was having he thought some physical problems, but he had never disclosed the nature of the problems to me, so I wasn't aware of it until the day before the announcement. That Monday, he came up to say, I've got this statement and I'd like you to look at a draft of the press release I'm gonna put out tomorrow morning. And then, the COVID and long hauler effects were disclosed. But what has resulted in him being so open about why he's retiring and what the effects are is he's wound up being incredible educational story in explaining what he's gone through in the detail and the level that he has. And when the press asked him questions, he was very candid and direct in the answers that he gave. So even as he was retiring and leaving, he was still showing the way, and trying to help others in the community who may be facing some of the issues that he's been facing.
Yeah, he actually reinforced what many have been saying throughout the last year or longer now, that it's these long-term effects of the virus. When we only count people that die, and you count everyone else that didn't die, a recovered person, that's not very accurate, because many, and we've had many on our show. We've had George Ma, who was very healthy and stuff till today, still struggling with the after effects. So with Senator English coming out and sharing that, I think it validated what many people are saying. You know, this thing, the long term effects of this can be long term, and well, we know a lot of people that recover. There's still a whole bunch of people, and like I said, many of them, a few of them are actually on the show tonight that are still suffering from the effects of COVID. So he basically validated what many has been saying. I think let me just toss this out, and you can dissect it how you want. I think obviously unemployment is one of the concerns of our viewers. Um, the HTA funding, real very big in the news right now. Minimum wage and heart. There's just so many things. I don't know how we're going to squeeze them all in, but we'll trust your judgment. And if I see any comments coming up or questions, I'll jump in and let you know. But that's kind of what we've been hearing.
Well, I would just start with the unemployment insurance, and there are several different facets to it. So I'm not sure which one is, going to actually answer the question that may be out there, but I'll just talk about several different portions of it. First and foremost, we failed as the legislature and the governor in being prepared for the pandemic. We were the lowest unemployment rate in the nation prior to the pandemic hitting. And we had prioritized the money for upgrading and the modernization of our IT systems. And we were focused in the Department of Taxation, first and foremost, in processing permits in a more expeditious way. You know, the DOT tax was going to, of course, generate more revenue for the state and its operations, and efficiency in permitting. People were complaining how long it takes to get permits through. And even in for those of us who live on the neighbor islands, you know, you have death in the family, and until you get death certificates, you can't close out your estate and settle all of your affairs. But it may take upwards of 3 weeks to get a death certificate in the mail. So how would we be more efficient? That's where we prioritized what we were doing, and we only had 11 full-time employees on Oahu because there were, you know, so few unemployed coming in. And so, you know, the system was antiquated and ill-prepared to deal with what happened here. And now we should have deployed additional state personnel to help a lot sooner than the 2 months or so it took for us to get more people there. We had people who were at home, working remotely that could have been redeployed, in that way. And so our response was slow, and I'm not here to make any excuses about what happened. I can tell you why, you know, the funding priorities were what they were pre-COVID. We've committed the money to upgrade the IT system now in unemployment so that we don't get stuck with this. But the second thing for all of the independent contractors, you know, like Uber and Lyft and others who had not paid into the unemployment system and they got that paid up relief from the federal government. It's interesting that the federal government said, we're going to give you the money, and here, state, you go deploy it so that when it gets all messed up, then they'll yell and scream at you. And the federal government wrote the check and they basically washed their hands and said, here, now you go deal with it. And so, you know, we've had people who have said, oh, you know, but these people should get the money that they paid into the system all these years. These people never paid into the system. They did not make an unemployment contribution into the fund, and they weren't eligible to collect unemployment until the pandemic hit. And then it was clear the pandemic shut down the whole economy, and these individuals needed to get help, and that's when the federal government stepped in. So, I've seen a lot less requests for assistance, but I still see one or two a day coming in, and we continue to work to help them. So, Charlie, you can give them my email address again if you're still having problems, please send Kouchi at capital, and that's TOL, as you spell capital, at capital.hawaii.gov. And, we'll do our best to try to help you, but we're hoping that the upgrades are there and we have the additional personnel. We had hired, outside contractors to assist us. And so we're working on that. The second thing that people were talking about is why weren't we going to forgive the taxes on the unemployment benefits like some of the other jurisdictions? Well, a place like South Dakota and Idaho, I think they were talking about having $1.5 billion surplus in their budgets, and they are not as dependent on tourism and hotel jobs and restaurant jobs like we are here in Hawaii. And Hawaii and Nevada were the hardest hit in the unemployment. We still continue to be the state with the highest unemployment in the nation. And, we were still facing a large deficit. So how do we do that? They characterized the $700 million loan repayment as the legislature bailing out big business again. 75%, 80% of the businesses in the state of Hawaii are small business. And right now, the two things that go into the unemployment fund, there's a schedule that, employers pay. And that schedule has moved up. And so employers are going to have to make a larger contribution to the unemployment fund than they were making before the COVID pandemic hit. So they're getting an increased assessment. But if they also had to pay down the full $700 million loan, a lot of the businesses would shut down for good because they couldn't afford to make that payment, make this new scheduled payment and continue to stay in business. And with all these businesses closing, where's the employers to get people back on the payroll? Now, all of these individuals on unemployment had the benefit of the federal plus up besides what the state had given. And so, the assessment was we can't have the businesses shutting their doors down and no employment opportunities available. And, so that's the direction we went in. As you know, we had rent relief programs, but what I liked about what we did with the CARES Act money is the checks went directly to landlords. And so at that point, the renter got relief of what they owed, but landlords who needed to make sure they got the check that was supposed to be for them got into their hands so they could pay their mortgages. And then we didn't get into foreclosure situations. So that was, some of the issues surrounding unemployment and, what we did. And then certainly I acknowledge the mistakes, if you will, that we had made in not prioritizing the unemployment and why we were in the predicament we were in initially.
Let me ask a question. It's was the response itself, was it just so overwhelming that it was something never, well, I know I'm getting kind of confused when I say this, but I kind of like it to, if somebody punches me in the face so many times, I'll know when to start blocking. That's the action that you take. So when the unemployment faced what it faced, was it so difficult that they weren't able to shift gears and, get out of the way and try something different? Or was it something that's written that, we got to follow these steps in trying to fix the problem?
No, we were just overwhelmed. And like I say, the part that's unfortunate is that we had immediately offered 45, I think is the number we'd come up with Senate employees, and we were going to have them go down and help. And then we were told that we couldn't, or they were not going to be taking our assistance. And I think early on, there was still some of the political walls, if you will. And so, are the legislative staffers going to go in and spy on the administration? Is there going to be some trade secrets that might get out that shouldn't be told. And, they didn't realize that our offices were being overwhelmed with calls and emails for help in unemployment insurance. And so the more people we could get to work on the problem, it would relieve the pressure that we were feeling within our own offices. And we just wanted to try to help the people that were out there. And then if you watch the COVID-19 committee meetings, it took the state more than 2 months to finally redirect all of those employees and set up at the convention center. The initial additional bodies for unemployment insurance was at the sandbox, but they couldn't take more than about 60 or 70 people there. And the convention center wasn't initially used because as you kept seeing what was happening in New York, in Italy, on television, 24 hours a day, the convention center was looked at as a hospital facility like they had used the convention center in New York City if the hospitals became overrun. And it was only when, we realized that our bed capacity was holding steady and we could move to do this. So it took over 2 months to redeploy all of these employees who were at home and, to commit the convention center space. And then you needed to get equipment. So you needed to bring in, all of the connectivity so they could have the computers to do the job. And, at that point, while we were overwhelmed and we moved much too slowly in response to the level of the problem that was out there.
How do we, I guess, as a safety lesson learned in the future, should something like this happen? You said that there were some political walls put up. How can it be made known that, when you get down to crunch time, how can we put the politics aside so we can really protect the community as a whole from this ever happening again?
Well, I think we've been doing, Monday morning quarterback assessments here about what worked right, what didn't work right. We are scheduling a Senate-wide caucus, so Senator Favela will be included tomorrow from 10 to 11:30 to just talk about, what went well during the session, what didn't work, so we can improve. But again, this is with an eye toward the testimony for sure being permitted, remotely, and so we'll have a chance to have those discussions. And then I think whether it was the speaker's House committee or some of the House members finally going down to the unemployment insurance office, the Senate COVID committee walking into the Department of Health, exposing the contact tracing issue as not being what was represented to us. I hope they realize that you cannot keep the information under wraps, and people are going to find out. So why don't we just start working together from the beginning? I think we've seen people like Mark Muguishi, who is a really behind the scenes guy to the average person on the street, has become a much higher profile individual. Ray Vera, Joe Green over at Queens, the healthcare systems people are all much better known personalities, and we've got that collaboration between business and, the government now, and hopefully we're going to be at a better place if this comes around. And then we'll simply have people who've been through it. When we do hurricanes, Kauai, we know how to do it because, we did Eva in 82, Iniki in 92, and there's still a lot of people who are around when that happened. And, when the more recent flooding occurred, well, everybody went through the drill in 2018. And I think it was in 2012, we had that landslide in Hanalei again. So, we've had this occur 3 times in 11 years on the North Shore. And, And so we know how to respond. We know what to expect. And, we're in a better place because of the experience of what all of us have gone through. And then people like yourselves, but that goes for anybody in the media. Now with all of the opportunities in social media to reach so many people, if you think you can try to sweep something under the rug, that doesn't happen. Today, people are questioning everything you do, and there are so many ways to get into interactive groups to have a much larger conversation.
Well, I do have a question, and I saw it pop up a couple of times. When can we expect the unemployment offices to actually open, where people can talk to a human in person? It's
We
been a long,
are
long time.
we're hopeful, at least on Oahu. I can't comment on the neighbor islands. And when I'm going to say this, I'm not talking about only the unemployment insurance office. I'm hopeful the state capital as well, but as early as June, but I haven't heard much lately. So maybe by July, we'll be open. I'm still unsure of what we might be able to do on the neighbor islands because we've had such small offices. So how do you get people in socially distanced in an appropriate way and maintain order and you know do it safely is my concern. But I'm expecting within the next 2 to 6 weeks that we'll be opened up.
Yeah, I just think that was a big piece that was missing, that people cannot get in touch with representatives from the office. And understand early on when everything was broken and there were a ton of claims, but we're a year and a half almost, and still cannot. And yet, all we hear, I mean, especially not from the legislature, but from the administration, the state administration, is how safe things are. I mean, the representation that that was a concern of employees at hotels, like, hey, once you start bringing visitors in, our employees are assured, no, man, it's safe. You take the necessary measures, but when it comes down to the state, that's not it's not safe enough. And I think the unemployment, today I took my mother-in-law, 83 years old, to do a driver's license renewal. The county of Kauai, I gotta say, they got it down. You make your appointment online. They got guys at the door making sure there's no bananas or idiots. You get a ticket, you get your timestamp, you go in, they call you. It's all done. I see no difference in renewing your driver's license and talking to someone about unemployment. And I think a lot of the frustrations that I'm getting, and thank you so much, Senator, for allowing us to share your email address, because that's where I send them. It's contact the Senate president, because I don't have the answer. And that is the biggest frustration I hear is we cannot talk to anybody. They don't
You
answer
know
the phone.
who's more famous than me in my office? Kaleo. So Kaleo is a young man, and he had graduated from Chapman College last year. And I found out, and Baron may know his sister Kaylee, but she's the same age as Egan Baron. So we met Kaleo's parents when we went up for the first luau, and he was like a 10, 12-year-old boy visiting his big sister, and then he graduates and comes in. I go, hey, I know you. And so he's the one that's been doing all of the emails. As soon as I get them, I forward them to Kaleo. He's been on the phone with everybody who leaves the phone number. He's been emailing back and forth. And so he's been doing an incredible job in our office, following up on all of these things. Well, I've been able to attend to the session, but still ensuring that people are being contacted, at least from our side. And, we continue to follow up.
Yeah, I think that would alleviate a lot of the stress, number one. Um, and we're doing it everywhere else. We're doing it everywhere else. So um, that was one of the top questions. And the other question that popped up from a viewer was MedQuest. And again, Senate president is with the legislative branch. A lot of these functions are the executive branch or the administration of the state. But they're asking about, are you aware if there are going to be any more increases in contract or emergency staffing for MedQuest? Because there's so many people that do not have medical insurance because of the pandemic.
So I don't specifically know. And actually, what, I'm assuming you advertised that we're going to be talking about something else tonight.
Yeah.
And there were two other guests that were supposed to be here that were
Oh,
now told that they weren't needed. And then I was told you can be here and talk about this by yourself. And a brand new subject, the update. So I would share with you that I had tried checking with Senator De La Cruz, the Ways and Means chair, and he had already he had a dinner scheduled. And then I had talked to Senator Keoho Kalole, who is the floor leader, but more importantly, he's the health committee chair. And he served on the COVID-19 committee. And I told Jarrett that there would be, I would venture, I guess, quite a few health related questions, but his wife was working late because he wasn't planning to do anything. He's got 3 young children, so he's on children duty, but they would both be happy to come back. So what we'll do is work on rescheduling a time, and I'll try to get the committee chair in to talk directly about what's happening in that area.
yeah. I think for the viewers, it's kind of unfair because, like we always say, we don't prep our guests. They come on. Senator Kouchi agreed to come on last minute. And so appreciate that, my friend. Appreciate that.
Question, there's a question about the TAT. Any increases? And would outside counties get a bigger chunk than what was expected, or how will that be handled?
They would wind up at least being where they were at. That's how the 3% worked out, and trying to figure out actually how the Big Island would be whole. And what's not talked about a lot is the fact that Kauai gets 14.5%, and we weren't generating that amount of business. But when it was passed, this was right after Hurricane Iniki, and it was felt back then, how do we make Kauai whole? And the magic to the 14.5% is that what was going to generate $12 million, which is what Kauai County needed to operate after Iniki. And so the 3% represents what the Big Island needed. They were the farthest behind, so this would keep Kauai whole. And actually, I think Oahu and Maui probably make out a little better, because in the way that they were sharing the Big Island, and I guess everybody's saying Hawaii Island. I don't want to be politically incorrect now. But for Hawaii Island or Hawaii County and Kauai County, Maui and Oahu helped subsidize the money we got through the TAT. But at this point, there's clearly serious conversation going on about where the direction is going, and are we pivoting quickly enough to take into account what that term sustainable tourism actually means. And I don't think any of us anticipated the visitors coming back with the speed that they have returned, and it has really not given us the opportunity to set any kind of, or put in any kind of reset button that I think a lot of the community was anticipating after having been shut down so long. We had some time after the flooding in April of 2018 to hold the additional community meetings, although there were 7 years of community meetings on that KA Beach Park plan. But finally, the political will to adopt it, to put in the 900 people a day carrying capacity, the permitting system, to make sure that we don't overuse the resource at KA Beach, that the roads aren't overcrowded so that emergency vehicles can't get in and out, that it's safe for people to drive back and forth. And none of those things had the opportunity to be put in place. We're so busy trying to figure out how you go through quarantine, no quarantine, what kind of pre-test, post-test, and all of these different things that we never got a chance to reset. And we haven't arrived at a conclusion, and the legislature has expressed grave concerns with the money there, and then saying that we're cutting from 79 to 60. That's certainly 25% significant cut, but at the rate that visitors have currently been coming back, does that money need to be reinvested somewhere else for now? That's all part of the debate, and we'll see where we end up. The governor's talked about vetoing the bill that contains that, but there's several items in there, and whether or not he winds up vetoing it, we'll see. But it will force all of us to get to the table and have that conversation about where we're going to be, what direction we're going to be going in, and how should we be carrying it out. And certainly, that money should be committed to make sure that we can better enforce illegal vacation rentals, which are all a huge part of the problem, and the people who weren't paying their fair share of the tax, which, wound up with the burden being carried even more by the hotels.
What is the general feeling of the legislature as it relates to tourism? There was a lot of promise when Director DeFries came on, and there was a lot of talk about redesigning or redefining tourism. And I understand. I was not surprised by the amount of visitors that came in, simply because everybody was just waiting for that opportunity. Everybody wanted to come to Hawaii because it's safe and it was cheap. But as far as this, we're moving so fast now. We didn't really take the time we needed to, as Mr. DeFries talked about his plan, or I forget what he called it, redesigning or
The
redefining.
4 pillars.
Yeah, whatever he called it. But now it's like it's too late to get started because we're already overrun, and it's growing a lot. We're looking at some major holidays coming up, Memorial Day and everything else. So what's the general consensus or the feeling of the legislature as far as that?
But I think more than anything else, we know that we need to invest in the infrastructure. And by that, whether it's, the Hanakapiai Trail, in our beaches. I've been getting quite a few complaints about the conditions of the bathrooms at the various parks again. And, you've certainly served the period through on the Kauai County Council when that was such a big issue of, maintaining, our facilities. And so with all of the money that was lost to DLNR, we've fallen so far behind in the maintenance of our natural resources that, to me, it's critical to invest in bringing back our natural resources and having them protected, and also having them in a condition that people can safely use them. And then some of the cuts were, to lifeguards potentially. I mean, that's going to be critically important if we having, the visitors back to do that. When Ways and Means toured, like they do in the interim, all of the different islands, we went out to KA Beach and they saw the permitting system in place. So Senator English brought that back and used it in Hana. And then when the National Guard went away and they don't have the checkpoint, you see the headlines now about the unrest in Hana by the residents, with the being overrun by visitors and the carrying capacity of their infrastructure. They've started charging, fees to use Wainapanapa State Park on Maui, and they're generating close to $90,000 a month now. And so they see that as self-sustaining to run better programs and management of the resource. We did pass a bill that would, allow us to start charging visitors for using the state parks. And at this point, it's not uncommon on the mainland to have to pay the fees, but we need to find ways to generate money to invest in the resource. And then as far as the marketing and everything else, I mean, it's not like the old days where you'd go on the road and visit travel agencies or go into a convention center with a big trade show. I mean, now you bring in social media influencers,
Mhm.
and then you have them go and ride a zip line or go on the Zodiac, go and eat at different restaurants, and post to their million or 5 million followers. And I mean, it's a whole different way of marketing. And does it cost the same amount of money if you're not having to fly to all these venues, or you're not buying prime media buys, but now you're having these social influencers. And so I think these are all of the conversations that are going on. And I don't think that there's any consensus about what is going to be the best way to go forward.
Has there been any talk within the Senate and or the House in trying to understand our visitor industry to the point, if we, it's good while we, there's certain areas like you say, Wainapa Napa, you charge a fee to go there. One other area you charge a fee. That if it gets so much fee structure set up all over, that if the visitor industry took a 180-degree turn and say, okay, we'll come to Hawaii, but we'll just stay in this particular area and not even worry about that. Has there any thought into that, seeing that if that could possibly happen, and whether as a state we're prepared for something like that to happen? Because I'm pretty sure money's generated to come to Hawaii, but then it's almost like it stops there. There's no outflowing as what one would expect, such as food trucks way out on the North Shore, getting, grabbing some business, things like that.
I don't personally think that that's the case, Charlie. And the reason why is, with the social media now,
Mhm.
I drive by Hilena's at 3:30 in the afternoon, and it's around the corner for the line trying to get in, because they were on, diners, drive-in and dives, or man versus food. People know about Rainbow Drive-In and their Loco Moco because, that was on diners, drive-in and dives. And so all of these places are, advertised. And then now, even with all of the GPS systems on your smartphones, so before, when the Japanese visitors would come, they pretty much get on the bus and you send them only to the areas you control, and you make sure their business and their money is spent only in those areas. Now they're all independent. You don't have the
Mm.
large groups like you used to, and people are looking for that unique experience. And that was one of the things Representative Tokioka and I really took on when I first got to the Senate, was those guidebooks that would say, okay, when you go there, I know it's private property, it says no trespassing, but all the locals disregard the sign, so just climb over the fence, walk here, and then you're going to get to the most amazing waterfall. And then we had how many incidents of drownings or near drownings by people who were following the guidebook, trespassing onto private property and going into dangerous areas. And you still have people wanting that unique experience. I want to go where the locals go is something you hear quite often. And so it's they and it's not like they go and play golf anymore. Golf isn't as popular as it is. I don't even know if the Marriott, or no, I guess it's what, Royal Sonesta now, and Timbers, if they even have tennis courts that are, actively in use. So that self-contained resort concept, they I don't see people doing that all the time. The only guys that do that is when you're having a staycation and you pack your cooler and you go down to Koloa Landing and you go hang out by the pool and you got the grill and the full kitchen and you just say, we've been working hard for the last 2 months and we just couldn't sit by this pool for 2 days.
Yep.
Yeah, my concern is that what's happening is we not gonna be able to catch up to the and I speaking for Kauai, Oahu is much bigger, more people, but for us, and we're not even at the point where we were, but just the traffic, the infrastructure, the facilities cannot handle the level of visitors. Now, I just saw a post that we need our visitors absolutely, and for anyone to think that we can survive without tourism, I think they're mistaken. But there's also a capacity, and we cannot continue to. It's just not fair, I think, for our local residents who's got to wait 1 hour to get from Safeway to Wailua because the traffic is so bad. And that's because as more and more tourists come in, uh, we just don't have the capacity. We don't have the highway capacity. We don't have the facilities
And I would tell
capacity.
you, I'm going to tie in Mailona Hospital to the traffic story. So, when Mayor Kawakami was representative, Kawakami, he worked hard to get planning money in for Mahilona and the campus. And I was laughing last week, Thursday. So I've worked with Council Member Nakamura on this project. And then I've worked with Managing Director Nakamura on this project. And now Representative Nakamura has gotten additional money. So there's been community meetings and, planning discussions about what might happen at Mahilona Hospital, expanding the healthcare facilities. Would we be able to do perhaps assisted living as our boomers are aging out? There's going to be a significant need for assisted living, being next to both the elementary and high school. Would there be potential for some affordable housing or teacher housing that could be on the Mahilona campus? And I needed to catch a flight at 5 o'clock to get back. I was going to be on Island Insights last Thursday. And so, at 3:05, I left Mahilona and got onto the bypass road and came to a complete stop about halfway through the bypass road. And I kept looking at my GPS and it was telling me that I was going to be back in Lehui by 3:43, and my son was going to pick me up at 3:45 so I could get to the airport. And I did not believe my phone, but eventually 3:40 pulled into the driveway. That was 40 minutes before it was full Pahana traffic. And, so I saw firsthand how the traffic is back compared to what it used to be. And then on Oahu, I live close to the Ward on-ramp. And so, it would take me 10 minutes or less to get to, appointments that I'd have to do. And over the last 3 weeks, I've had to adjust my driving time because it's taking a lot longer with the amount of traffic that's on the highways here in Oahu. You can really see a dramatic difference here. And so, we'll have to keep working. I see some of the work is starting in front of the cocoa palms. They're supposed to add some of the lanes. Finally, they've resolved apparently some of the EV issues that had stalled the project for quite some time. And, we're moving forward to get some of those improvements in. But, I fear that it's not going to be enough for the current level of traffic that we have.
Yeah, because we're chasing. We're behind the 8 ball. So when the planning, and that's just how government works, right? It's not just limited to Hawaii, it's everywhere. The planning phases of those projects were done at a time where the traffic counts were so much lower. You never catch up. So when they're done with this, okay, not enough. And again, without limiting the number of visitors coming in, either through controlling or being a little bit scrutinized more routes coming in, direct flights, we won't win. We're not going. You keep you'll never get ahead of the eight ball. And I don't know what we do. I guess for the local people, I guess and that's my concern is it fair for the local people to have their quality of life compromised because we got to satisfy as many tourists as we can? And I think that's the feeling a lot of people have. And I don't know the answer to that without some drastic changes.
Well, the other thing when I come back on, I'm gonna see if we can have a better conversation between the state money we've got in and with Adam Rovesari and the housing director for the county, and maybe where we're gonna be able to partner and bring some of the money we put in the budget to Kauai, and what those direct projects are going to mean. Clearly getting more affordable housing units is important. We've been working to try and see if we can get an executive order to have some of that base yard for the DLNR given to the county of Kauai to expand that transitional housing program they have between the water department, the DLNR offices, and KEO, and see if we can find other land for the DLNR base yard so that they can get their job done. But the great thing about the transitional housing that was recently completed is it's next to the county park and ride. There's bus service. Kauai Economic Opportunities right across the street. They have the transitional housing programs. They have a lot of other assistance to help those who are in need. And, the only way that we're going to deal with some of these issues is having affordable units nearer to where people are working so that we keep some of those cars off the road. And then the resident doesn't have that much of a commute to be caught in the traffic all the time.
Or you force the tourists to rent cars. I mean, I think that's the frustration, Senator, is that everything is, and this is just my observation again, it's not, I don't speak for our viewers, but everything is made to make the visitors experience a good one, and the local residents gotta make the adjustments. And I think that's where that thinking has to change, whether it's from HTA, wherever. But that, I think, is where that thinking needs that paradigm of, at one time where we could accommodate and we welcome the tourists. Now we cannot accommodate them because there's just too many. And I would like to see the restrictions placed on visitors as opposed to forcing our local residents to have to redo their lifestyle so we can accommodate the tourists. And I think that's a task that HTA, I thought anyway, was the direction that they were heading, but it just happened too fast again. So now we're back where we were.
Well, I guess, when I say about building the housing closer to work and everything else, I'm not trying to change how a resident has to behave in that, but I am trying to create a space where they have reduced costs for the maintenance of a vehicle. Did you, watching the national news, they're selling gasoline at $6-7 a gallon, in North Carolina, Atlanta. And, at this point, maybe you need just one vehicle because you do live closer to work. And, it's ironic. It's actually going back to old school. Everybody worked at the plantation. You had your house all around the mill and everybody walked to work. And then you jumped on the truck and then you went and, but how much more money do we put in the residents' pocket if they're not on the road driving an hour to go to work? Now, when they're on the weekend, sure, they need to be able to use the recreational facilities and have the same opportunities as everybody, and it shouldn't be all tailored to the visitor. And then certainly some of these fees that are targeted to visitors, hopefully will allow better use by the residents of to get to the facilities, or when we get there, there will be enough money to maintain them in a way that it's going to be enjoyable for anyone who uses it, whether you're a guest or a resident. We didn't even get to talk about the 227 or 223,482,000 in CIP money.
Damn. You wanna, you can.
No, we've got money to improve some of the water systems in the Wailua Kapa area, which certainly would help if we're going to expand the use at Mahilona. It helps for Kapa Elementary, Kapa High School, besides the residential areas. Out there, Representative Morikawa worked hard to get some money for Polihali, for Kokee, and we're excited. There will be a new gymnasium for Waimea High School. So there'll be two new gymnasiums within the next 4 or 5 years. But part of it is having adequate shelter and space in the case of emergencies, and also the ability to host other larger community events. And who would have known, as we were going through the funding, how important it would be to have larger areas that you can ventilate and allow maybe better gatherings in a safer way. I saw in the news tonight before coming on, Mayor Kawakami saying the numbers have started to come back down again, that Kauai may consider going back to Tier 4 as early as next week. I think Kauai has done a fantastic job of doing the contact tracing, about quickly identifying areas, and they haven't been afraid to say where the outbreaks were. So if you were here in this area, you should go get checked. I was glad when I heard the mayor last week talk about just how responsible Rob's Good Times Grill is, and how quickly they shut down and tested every employee, did the deep cleaning. Because I know I was on Kauai in end of November and the whole month of December when the mayor, instituted the quarantine and opted out. So I couldn't go to Oahu and come back without doing a 14-day quarantine. So I had lunch several times at Rob's and, watch the protocols that they do, when you come in. And then I was sitting down at a table with Joy and Egan having lunch, and see Jimmy Tokioka come in with a few guys. The only seats were at the bar close to me. And I went up to say hi, and the hostess came over and politely said, excuse me, when you're sitting at your table having your lunch, you can have your mask on. The moment you stand up, whether you went to the restroom or anything else, you need to have your mask on. And I'm like, I'm incredibly sorry. Walked back to my table, got my mask, put my mask on, went back and said hello. And she did it in a really nice way. She wasn't like, hey, you Lolo, what you doing? And, don't make me whack you on the head. Politely done, professionally done. I got the message and I was compliant right away. And so, I was very impressed in how they've been running it. But if somebody comes in, I mean, what do you do other than exactly what they did to follow, take immediate action to try and contain the situation?
Yeah.
We would love to carry on the discussion, Senator. And if you can get some of your colleagues on, committee chairs or whatever, we'd definitely make this platform available. I think it's educational. We probably have to do like a 2-hour show. And I mean that. Really,
now that you're, I've been so busy with the session, I was laughing before they went live. I was telling Mel, I called Charlie last Thursday. Hey, I told Mel I can do 7 to about 7:50 before Island Insights. He never called me back. And Charlie says, oh, we're only Monday, Wednesday, Friday now. I said, wow, I'm so busy in session. I didn't know you changed.
Yeah, you know, we finally unionized. Charlie and I finally unionized, and the sponsors didn't want to pay the overtime, so we had to cut back to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Well, Patsy and Stephanie, you guys did a good job.
Yeah. So, any closing thoughts, Senator, before we get you back on at another? I mean, we really do want to carry on the conversation, and
No, I'll go work with my colleagues. It's been a while since I've been on, and appreciate the forum that you and Charlie provide. The information is there, and as you always say in the disclaimer, Charlie, we provide it. You draw your own conclusions, and you go where you want. And then I go to your social media, Facebook page, and see the conclusions you've drawn. Because well, you seem so nice and impartial in this format. You do have opinions.
woo, woo. If you do not follow Charlie Iona on Facebook, you need to do that tonight.
And lately you've been good about the limitation on the jokes. So maybe maybe the Facebook censor in your house has been, or filter has been working better lately.
Well, first time I've ever had to implement this new platform media. It's free. It's an app. It's free. It's called Stephanie Iona, and let me tell you, it works. It works.
I keep looking for that big hand, the hook to come grab you.
Senator, I can honestly tell you that the jokes have not stopped. I am shocked that he didn't have one tonight. I think the discussion was a little too serious, though. But yeah, he hasn't stopped.
All right. Well, I'll be back in touch and hope to be back on soon with some of my colleagues.
All right, Charlie. Any closing comments for your senator?
Yes, I'd like to say, as always, thank you very much for Senate President Ron Kouchi for joining us tonight. To our viewers, as he said, we try to bring the information, you draw the conclusion, but you're always entitled to an opinion. But like we said before, let's keep it civil. One thing that I do know, from the very beginning when we started this, we've always said, why isn't it available that a location is made known to the general public so we all can participate whether or not we were there when there's an outbreak? I'm glad it's being done now. I kind of wish it was done earlier, but we've had things, the county has had things pretty much under control. Unfortunately, our other county, they've run into a lot of problems, and hopefully they've realized that it may not be a bad idea to share with the public where some of these breakouts are, because it makes a difference. Because if we can all participate for one common cause, and that is to keep safe, then why not? So with that said, go ahead,
and I
sir.
guess I realized that there was one important thing. To all of the graduates who we had hoped would have had a better year after the class of 2020, this from April through the rest of the year. I'm sorry that it wasn't better, and that we didn't resume all of the sports and the social activities and everything else that's there. But it's around the corner. So for those of you who have navigated an incredibly difficult journey this last 15, 16 months, I want to extend my congratulations, my best wishes to the class of 2021. I certainly hope that in learning how to deal with the adversity you face, it's going to make you better prepared for the world that you're going to walk into, and look forward to the great contributions that you're going to make to this great state and great nation. So best wishes, and have a safe graduation.
Well, I'd like to say, from my esteemed colleague, he yields the floor back to me so I can finish up my 3 minutes. I'd like to say again, thank you to a wonderful Senate President. And I also like to say to the class of 2021, congratulations and wish things could be better. But, main thing, you folks are all safe. That's the main thing, you're all safe. Mel?
Thank you, Senator. From the beginning, first on, Senator Kouchi was very nice in allowing us to share his email. And I can tell you that he does help. So go ahead and screenshot that. If not, just Google him on Google. His email pops right up, his office email if you have any questions. He's been very, very helpful for many of our viewers that contact Charlie and I with issues. We definitely don't have the answers to all the stuff, especially early on, but we appreciate the Senate President coming on our show and giving up of his time. Looking forward to the next one, Senator, and appreciate your opening dialogue about Colt and the volleyball team, just to get us to remember that we live in the best place on earth. And as Charlie said, we got to stay safe, people. We just gotta be safe. We're gonna get through this, but we gotta do it by being safe. All right, guys. Friday we have Feel Good Friday, 7:00. We got a few businesses coming on. I hope you can join us. Until then, you guys stay safe. God bless. Senator, you stay safe up there. We'll see you when you get back.
Stay safe, Senator.
Aloha.
Aloha.